Hi, this is Annie Fitzsimmons. I'm the Washington REALTORS Legal Hotline lawyer. Hunkered today in the hotline bunker, hoping that all of you are also taking precautions to keep you and the ones that you love safe from infection by the coronavirus. I want to tell you today about a form released by Northwest MLS on Thursday, March 19th, 2020, intended to keep your transactions safe from infection or safe from the consequences of the coronavirus as well. Many of you have found that there is a threat to your transactions based on the inability of the parties to perform the terms of the agreement because either the closing date is approaching and the recording office is closed, or because contingency deadlines are approaching, inspection, for example, and you can't get an inspector into the seller's home for any number of reasons affected or caused by the coronavirus. The form I'm referring to is Form 22FM, Force Majeure Addendum. In very lay terms, a force majeure event is one that makes it feel like the world has gone crazy. Contract parties can't perform the terms of the agreement unrelated to anything that they have done. Based on events outside the control of either party, the parties can't perform the terms of the agreement. Performance is impossible. With a force majeure event, this addendum would allow the parties to negotiate for an automatic extension of both the deadlines that occur within the transaction from the date of mutual acceptance to the date of closing, as well as negotiate an automatic extension of the closing date. It's a 4-paragraph form. The first paragraph defines a force majeure event in much more legal terms than those that I just used. Paragraph 2 deals with an automatic extension for the deadlines that occur within the transaction, and paragraph 3 allows for a negotiation of the closing date. Paragraph 4 deals with possession. I'll get to that in a minute. Both of the second and third paragraphs have a blank space. By default, the blank space says 10 days, but the parties can negotiate any number of days that they believe is the right number of days to cause an extension. Again, paragraph 2 deals with internal deadlines. For example, the inspection contingency, but also any other contingencies benefiting either party. The provision allows for an automatic extension of the contingency itself. It does not automatically extend the negotiation periods or the notice periods. So, for example, if you had an inspection contingency that was automatically extended by paragraph 2, for 10 days, it would extend the buyer's right to conduct the inspection. At the end of that time period, the 3-day negotiation periods would not be impacted. Those 3 days would still remain as 3-day negotiation periods. Paragraph 3 would automatically extend the closing date in the event of a force majeure event. If at the end of the extended closing date the parties can't close, Form 22FM assigns recovery of the earnest money to the buyer. This is a negotiated provision. There's no right or wrong as to who between buyer and seller gets the earnest money, except that the boilerplate language of this form assigns it to the buyer. That's in recognition that if the transaction fails to close because of a force majeure event, that's not the fault of the buyer, and buyers shouldn't forfeit their earnest money. It's also not seller's fault. Seller will also be harmed if the transaction doesn't close. If the parties don't agree that in that event the earnest money should automatically be reassigned to buyer, then that's something you're going to have to think about. Paragraph 4 deals with closing, and it deals with it in the situation where seller has agreed to give possession on closing, and if the transaction can't record on the closing date and seller is required to surrender possession on closing, and because of a force majeure event is left to guess as to when the transaction will actually close, is it fair to say to the seller, hey, seller, you don't know if the transaction is actually going to close on April 5th, 6th, 7th, or 8th, but whenever it does, you have to move out that day? Or is it more reasonable to say, when it does close, then you have a day or 2 days or whatever the agreed time period is to get out of the house? That's the purpose of paragraph 4, to negotiate that issue. If you have questions on Form 22FM or anything else that's happening right now, send an email to me, legalhotline@warealtor.org. Thank you for being a Washington REALTORS member.